The Battle of Tsaritsyn was a crucible forging the ruthless ideology of the future dictator during 1918. We must analyze this crucial Civil War siege to understand his profound psychological and strategic shift. Tsaritsyn tested the political commissar's early command style, revealing brutal efficiency over military doctrine. The siege was not merely a military victory, it became a template for internal purges and absolute control later. Why did this forgotten engagement leave such a permanent bloody mark upon his revolutionary consciousness? The political commissar arrived as an administrator, but quickly transformed into an iron-willed, decisive field operative. We observed the critical moment where political loyalty entirely overshadowed professional military expertise in command. This specific battle marked the birth of his lifelong rivalry and deep distrust of formalized military structures. The revolutionary leader. The war commissar opposed his methods, warning of dangerous disregard for protocols and logistics. The future dictators. Primary obsession was securing the essential grain supply line for the starving revolutionary centers. This immediate existential need justified any cruelty. Efficiency demanded extreme measures for survival and success. Tsaritsyn taught the steel man. A pivotal lesson: fear is a more reliable and immediate motivator than ideological conviction. The early strategy was chaotic, defined by political fervor rather than conventional lines of defense or tactical planning. What were the immediate geopolitical stakes demanding Tsaritsyn the Volga transport hub be held at any cost? The answer lies in the city's strategic junction, linking resource-rich southern territories with the central power. Failure meant famine and swift collapse for the revolution, elevating the commissar's role immensely and immediately. We must consider the counterfactual. Had Tsaritsyn fallen, would the steel man, ever have gained such unchecked authority? His initial actions involved bypassing local military commanders, asserting political authority directly over troop movements. This set the dangerous precedent. Political reliability became the sole criterion for command superseding all experience. The summary executions of counter-revolutionaries and military specialists revealed the sheer extent of his brutal takeover. The loyal marshal, the Red Commander, became his key ally, endorsing this purge of suspect military professionals fiercely. This partnership, born in the siege's chaos, later formed the core of his influence in subsequent military reorganizations. The purge eliminated potential internal rivals and created an environment of terror necessary for absolute personal control. This pattern explains the later mass purges of the 1930s, eliminating old military guard who knew Tsaritsyn's messy truth. The future dictator viewed the military's expertise as a direct threat to his political power base and ideological purity. Historians suggest that Tsaritsyn was where he learned the art of rewriting history to suit political narratives perfectly. The narrative surrounding the victory was immediately manipulated to glorify his individual decisive intervention completely. The photographic evidence was often deliberately altered to place the commissar centrally in every heroic major scene. Even minor tactical successes were amplified into monumental strategic achievements solely attributed to his genius command. This deliberate myth-making taught him the enduring political value of self-created military legend for future power consolidation. The actual combat strategies deployed were often costly frontal assaults, betraying a basic disregard for human loss entirely. The brutal logistics required masses of human labor and relentless effort, mirroring the Soviet labor approach globally. Later, we examine the lasting lesson: overwhelming force and sheer resilience compensate directly for any strategic or tactical errors. The battle showcased the critical role of political infrastructure, the power of the commissar system in total military control. Tsaritsyn established a precedent where commissars held greater authority than generals, ensuring political alignment strictly. This structure allowed him to micromanage the war effort, a trait that proved disastrous in later conflicts, especially World War II. Consider the technology-limited use of armored trains, and primitive radio communications defined the scope of the brutal siege. Yet the commissar mastered using these limited resources for maximum terror, concentrating firepower decisively on key points. The geographical terrain of the city, positioned along the river, further amplified the strategic importance of supply routes clearly. Holding the rail junctions and river ports meant controlling the flow of oil grain and soldiers across the entire South. The cost of the siege in human life was staggering, establishing his reputation for accepting catastrophic losses without hesitation. Why did the political commissar prioritize ideological conformity, even when it clearly undermined immediate military effectiveness there? Because to him, maintaining internal political control was always paramount. External enemies were secondary to purity. Tsaritsyn became the psychological testing ground for eliminating dissenting voices or perceived disloyalty immediately and publicly. His involvement solidified a deep belief in personal centralized authority, bypassing collective decision-making entirely from then on. This distrust extended to the revolutionary leader, whose decentralized, modernized approach clashed fundamentally with the siege's spirit. The tension between these two visions, centralized terror versus professional military reform, is the siege's true lasting legacy. We look closer at the tactical failures that the future dictator's narrative successfully erased from official record entirely. Reports detail several instances where local commanders' rational advice was ignored, resulting in unnecessary, devastating casualties swiftly. The Steel Man learned that successful manipulation of intelligence reports guaranteed plausible deniability later when failures occurred. The battle solidified his reliance on inner circles of unquestioning loyalists, exemplified by his continued support for the Red Commander. This loyalty, often blind, ultimately hampered the Soviet military command years later, leading to catastrophic miscalculations severely. Tsaritsyn offers a chilling lesson on how an individual's personal paranoia can evolve into standardized, institutionalized state violence. The entire operation demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of terrorizing opponents into submission, rather than using precise maneuver warfare. Furthermore, this siege confirmed his tactical preference for immovable defensive lines over mobile, flexible strategies, always. This rigid defensive mindset, honed at Tsaritsyn, tragically defined the Red Army's initial disastrous approach against the Axis invasion. The Commissar, subsequent career was marked by promoting only those who survived the Tsaritsyn bloodbath and understood the power dynamics. These survivors became the political and military elites deeply indebted to the future dictator's favor and protection, absolutely. Analyzing this period is vital to understanding the core pattern of his leadership, ruthless centralization, and fear of independent thought. The destruction of the city itself demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice everything, property, lives, infrastructure, for political gain. The lack of humanitarian concern became normalized. Human life was viewed purely as expendable material for the revolutionary cause. This chilling calculus, refined in the Volga dust later, permitted the atrocities of collectivization and the Gulag system completely. The siege cemented the idea that success is measured not by tactical elegance, but by the sheer volume of material applied brutally. We reflect upon how historical battles seemingly distant can directly prefigure the massive strategic blunders of later greater wars. Tsaritsyn served as the practical school where ideological fanaticism learned to wield massive, indiscriminate violence effectively. The outcome reinforced the myth of the political commissar's innate military genius, justifying his later unquestioned military interventions always. This self-assurance led to the disastrous purges of experienced officers like Tukhachevsky, paralyzing the army before 1941 completely. The immediate post-battle reward was the renaming of the city to Stalingrad, eternally linking the place to his personality. This act of renaming epitomized his belief that personal glorification must physically supersede traditional or collective historical memory. Consider the profound psychological impact this early success had on a man insecure about his formal military qualifications always. Tsaritsyn proved to the Steel Man that he could impose his will on chaos, bypassing the need for complex formal education structures. This confirmation of raw political power meant that he never truly trusted anyone who possessed independent professional merit fully. The legacy of Tsaritsyn is evident in every subsequent Soviet military command, where political obedience dictated battlefield decisions strictly. The entire siege became a foundational myth of the party, used relentlessly to justify subsequent campaigns of elimination and ideological conformity. Analyzing the Tsaritsyn experience is essential for any strategist seeking to grasp the destructive nature of unchecked political command. We see the origins of a system where military counsel was met with suspicion, potentially resulting in swift and irreversible condemnation. The horror of Tsaritsyn lies not just in the deaths, but in the blueprint it provided for decades of systematic internal state repression later. This single battle defined his view of acceptable military losses and the ultimate dispensability of every individual life in conflict. It was the moment the political commissar transformed into the ruthless autocrat, ready to shape the Soviet Union by sheer terror. This case study offers modern analysts chilling critical insights into the anatomy of totalitarian command structure and its dangers.